My next guest's lifelong love affair with pastry began during a 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. shift, leading him to pursue the Baking and Pastry Arts program at the Culinary Institute of America, while working his way up from the Assistant Pastry Chef to the Executive Pastry Chef at Shadowbrook Restaurant in Capitola. He also became the Executive Pastry Chef at UCLA. He is now chef and owner of his own pastry shop, Baked Bar LA. Please welcome to Inside Art Head, the artist, Anthony Nigro. Greetings, everyone, and thanks for joining the Inside Art Head podcast. It's here we'll explore the inspiration, motivation, process, and fulfillment of creating art. I'm your host, Roni Zulu, bringing you inspirational stories from artists around the world. Well, Tony, or Anthony, what should we call you?
Tony's fine, Zulu.
Tony, thanks for being on the show and allowing us to get inside your art head.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on the show because most of the shows we do are about what people usually think of as art. When you say art, people say painting, drawing, sculpture, things like that.
Yeah.
But we all know, I believe there is a definite culinary art, and it takes a lot of skill, a lot of practice to get it just right, because I know me, I'm pretty persnickety about what I eat. And I have found in the past that you are a man that delivers. And let's just jump right into what I just mentioned and your take on it. Do you believe that culinary, cooking, baking, so on and so forth, do you consider it an art?
I do. Yeah, I think it's definitely an art form because there's an artisan or craftsman behind whatever's being created, and their experience and their passion and their artistic flair is coming out in whatever they're creating for the person to enjoy or consume, So it's there, definitely.
Now, with that, let's talk about when we meet most artists and we get in conversation. One of the first things that people always tend to ask me and some of my friends that are artists are like, so I assume you've always been drawing as a little kid with crayons and, pencils and whatsoever. Let's talk about what you do. You are a baker on a very high level of baking. What initially drew you to the kitchen, which is where your craft is performed, and then to baking in particular?
Yeah, I can go back to early memories of being in the kitchen with my mom and just really enjoying it. And I had an opportunity in my late teenage years, kind of when I was getting out of high school, where I was kind of considering it, that maybe this could be a fun career. But I had gotten a job in a kitchen through somebody I knew, and it was on the hot side of the kitchen doing savory and prep and peeling hundreds of potatoes and beets and carrots and just doing prep and plate ups. And I fell in love with it. And from there on, there was a position that opened up with the pastry chef, and the executive chef's like, I think you would really enjoy this. You should try it. And so I did, and I fell in love with it. And that's where my focus went from savory to baking and pastry. And it's been a fun ride ever since.
Well, we're really glad that you did. I want to touch on something that you mentioned about you being what some would call a prep cook, as you said, peeling and doing this and that. Can you tell us, well, first of all, I relate to it because so many times when people want to learn painting or tattooing from me, everybody wants to go for the big stuff right away. Can you tell me the importance and what lessons you learned from starting prepping before jumping into the heavy lifting?
A lot of things. You learn how to you learn how to be organized, because you have to be organized in what you're doing, and you have to manage your time because you're being given a task and the executive chef is waiting for you to finish it and to move on to the next thing. So you learn time management. You also learn how to be organized. You also have to be able to listen, because you're giving instructions and they show you how to do something, and they usually only show you once and they don't want to show you again, because if you ask them again, they're usually not too happy about it. And they want to see replicated what they showed you how to do. So whether, let's example, peeling an asparagus. I worked at one place where we would peel the end of the asparagus and then we would cut it on a bias. And all the asparagus had to be facing the same direction in the container you were putting them in. And I remember there was a guy that started working with me, and he joined me, but he didn't want to do it. He was just throwing them all in the pan, and he wasn't doing them nice. I'm like, no, you got to do it this way. And he was like, no, it's okay. And the chef came over and goes, what are you doing? You got to redo all of this. This is not how it should look. I'm like, I told you, you got to do it this way. You got to listen, and you got to replicate. So I think time management, being organized, and just listening skills, and staying focused.
Okay, so I imagine there was a lot of really having to pay attention to what your instructor had to say, and learning and trusting that he really knows what's right here.
Yeah, and I think it's from the experience and the skill set, because we have, depending where you're producing an item or working, I think too there's maybe an expectation. We were working at a beach resort, so I think the caliber of product we were putting out too, there's an expectation for it to just be a cut above everything else. Like, it needs to be nice because people are coming here as a destination, so everything should be like, not everybody cuts the end piece of the asparagus and on a nice little bias, like, and then peels it too. I mean, and we were doing that. It was just making that little bit of touch of difference that set us apart from everybody else.
Now, let's flip the script real quick. Have you been on the other end when you had to tell someone specific ways things were to be done?
Yeah, I have, and it's funny. It brings me back to those memories where, I show you how to do it, and I want it to look like that, but when I come back, it doesn't look like that. Like, wait a second, I showed you how to do it, and we did one together, but when I came back, they all look different. Like, so what happened? So it's almost like the game of telephone. Like, you tell somebody something, and they kind of hear part of it by the time it comes through a few people. It's almost like they start off good, and then all of a sudden, wait, what's happening? Like, I can't be here the whole time to be with you, but it should look like this. And we want a standard, and we want it to look uniform within reason, right? Like, every loaf of sourdough is not going to look the same, but a nice little petit gâteau, a little pastry or cake in our display case, you want them all to look nice. They should all look beautiful.
And I would imagine when a student or protege actually gets it nice, there has to be a bond felt with you and that person when that comes together, yes?
Totally. Yep, totally. And I think that usually the person that is learning from the process sees it too, and it's kind of like a eureka moment, like, oh, I get it now. And especially too, if they see it in from the front of the house perspective, like if they're in the front and they're setting up the display for customers to see, and when they see everything that they just decorated or made, and they're putting it and lining it up in the case nicely, and it just looks beautiful when you're done. And it's very rewarding to see that, and I think it's fulfilling too.
I would imagine that definitely instills a sense of pride in you and the student. Oh, that's wonderful. Let's talk about the difference between baking and cooking. We kind of say cook when we imagine someone in the kitchen. Whatever they do, they're in there cooking. Can you talk about the differences in baking and cooking and the possible challenges one versus the other?
Yeah. I think I would start going back to what you said about an art form. I believe that both of them is a form and expression of art in cooking and baking. They are just done differently. And I think, though both at a molecular level, yes, they both are a science, I feel like there is a little bit of more of a methodical science to baking, because in baking, the ingredients have to be balanced to create something. So whether, your basic ingredients, whether it's flour, sugar, and a fat, you balance those to create something. So in a cake or a cookie, you essentially have the same ingredients, but something is outweighing the other one, whether it's the fat or it's the sugar and the flour is lower, and something else comes out of that creation because of the balance. So you have a cake or you have a cookie, and you put it in the oven and it's like it's going to work or it's not. Like the souffle is going to rise or it's not. If it doesn't rise, you got to start over. In cooking, I think it can be a little bit more forgiving because I feel like sometimes you can fix things after the fact. But baking isn't necessarily that forgiving sometimes. It's like, well, that was an epic fail and we have to start over. But you learn from that. You learn like what you did wrong. Like, oh my gosh, we forgot the salt. Or the weight on the water in the bread is completely off and we have to start over. So learning process, but I think that would, in my experience, I would say that was the biggest difference. And I think bakers have to be patient too, because there's a lot of waiting in baking. There's a lot of waiting for a bread to rise or a bread to rest or a dough to rest, and you've just got to wait and find something else to do while that's proofing or whether it's resting. So got to be patient.
Now, I'd like to ask you, since you brought that up, when we watch social media, we see the best of everyone. Everybody puts on their best clothes, their makeup, and all of that. Rarely do we see the failures. Can you? People will probably get a kick out of this. Tell us about a failure in baking that hit you, and you're like, okay, I learned from that one.
There's been a few. I've had a few failures. I could categorize it like you have a failure with a cake. I'm baking a cake. You think it's going to be fine. You filled up the pan just to the right level and it's a wedding cake, and you look in the oven and everything's overflowing like a volcano and you're like, what happened? And I've had that before.
Oh my gosh.
And you have to just start over. Like you can't use it. You can let it bake and finish, but it's just a mess in the oven and the cake just doesn't come out right. And I've had that before. A bread not coming out right, just not rising, just the finished product, like that just didn't work. We just gotta start over. Yeah, I mean, trying to think. Chocolate is very temperamental, and you can be working with it for like hours, and the finished product, it looks like it's going to be perfect, but an hour later, like after it's set, it doesn't set right, and you're like, oh my gosh, all this time I put into this, and something in the humidity or something didn't set in my tempering of the chocolate. So you have to be patient, and you got to be willing to start over.
It's so great to hear this because with most things that we take in with our senses, whether it's a painting or food or a song, we get the end result. We don't see all that the creator went through. And there's a lot of trial and error that I'm sure that you've gone through with frustrations and joys when you get it right. So I'm glad you shared that with us.
And I think
speaking
when you
of
said
that,
the joy, I think when you get to that joy with the finished product, it outweighs the failures. Like it's like, because you don't forget it, but the joy feels so good and it's so rewarding that it outweighs that.
Oh yeah. Now let's talk about that. Let's just jump right into those who might not be familiar with what you offer. What does your shop offer?
Well, we call ourselves a neighborhood bake shop. We are a patisserie, that's what's on the door. We have a full coffee and espresso bar, but we offer a full line of viennoiserie products. So you have croissants, like this is a butter croissant. We have full line of croissants.
Now
more
I'm hungry.
than a dozen different types of croissants. We offer breads, lots of different breads. Our top seller is our country sourdough. And then we also have cakes and desserts. One of our top selling cakes is our chocolate fudge cake. This is a full 100.
Oh my gosh.
And we have like some savory items too, like some breakfast sandwiches and croissant sandwiches. But it's definitely a cool, casual place to come and hang out, chill, have an amazing cup of coffee, and a wonderful paired with a wonderful pastry or bread. Yeah.
Awesome. Now that you've showed us those, we're all wondering: are those Tony creations? Are they your recipes that we're seeing?
They are, and a blend of things that I've picked up and learned in the past, because you want to create something that's truly your own, right? So if you had something that works somewhere else, you're like, okay, I like this, but now I'm on my own. I'm going to open my own thing. How am I going to make it different? How am I going to set us apart? How are we gonna change? Like the way we laminate our croissant, the way we shape our croissant, we do it a little bit different from a lot of other people. Like we have this little shape right here. It's a little cut. You don't normally see
Oh,
that, but it shows more layers, and it's pretty cool.
oh my gosh, yeah.
We
I've
do
never
something
seen
a
that in
little,
a
yeah.
croissant.
So we do something a little different, and just even like with our breads, like we do a different. In our country sourdough, we're using a blend of an American flour and a French flour, and it just has this wonderful taste. And we've got a starter that's about, I want to say, like 5, 6 years old right now that we're using for this. And so it's a creation, and it's a learning process too, because even you start with something and from the beginning, and it even kind of evolves and changes as you go, as your recipe keeps getting better and better. So, but yeah, our
Now,
creations.
speaking on that you're talking about the ingredients, let's go down that road. And I'm going to relate it to what I do as a painter. There's so many things that I could purchase pre-made. I could purchase a canvas that's already stretched, certain things that I use to paint pre-made and go from there. But I'm the type of painter, I like to stretch my own canvas because I get raw canvas, I gesso it. Those who don't know what gessoing is putting a base on it, stretch it, basically from scratch, because I want to know the quality for one, and for two, I want to have complete control of it. Now, is it the same with what you do? Are you basically what someone would be scratch? Do you tend to stay away from pre-made and then jumping off from there?
Exactly. We're doing everything from scratch. We want to have a good starting point, and we use the best ingredients we can. We try to source the best stuff we can, and as local as possible as well. And yeah, people taste the difference when they come in. So when you get the feedback, they're like, "Your sourdough is the best in town," or "Your croissant, I can taste it." I mean, we're using all the Vinoiserie product, all of our croissants. We're using butter that we get from France. So I mean, we're shipping in great butter for that stuff, and it's pricey, but you taste the difference, you know. And even like we are saying with the sourdough, our country sourdough, we're using a blend of flours with the American and the French flour. We ship in some French flour, and it's great. It's a great blend and tastes good, and people taste the difference in quality ingredients.
I couldn't agree more with that. It's like building a house. If the base isn't sound, then just forget it. And with that, let's talk about building up. Let's talk about your career a little bit. You came from an apprentice all the way up to an executive pastry chef. Now that's a jump, and I'm sure that took some time. And what kept you motivated? If you can tell us about, let's say in your early stages, I'm sure it was challenging. There were probably times where you were wondering if you could even pay your bills, and then you moved all the way to an executive chef. How do you stay motivated in a career like ours, where creative people and moms and dads tend to say, get a real job or you'll starve? Well, we won't starve in your job. We could eat pastries all day, but you know what I mean? How do you keep motivated when more or less the odds in the world are a bit stacked against you, or are they?
It's definitely a tough industry. There's ups and downs, highs and lows for sure. For myself, I think what kept me mostly motivated were I liked the challenge. I liked learning more. I liked pursuing new things and learning new things and pushing myself to the next level each time. And I think I would say that that's the greatest contributor to where I've gotten to where now I have my own business. But getting to the executive level or like corporate pastry chef level where I've been before as well too, it's that drive for the challenge. I think for me, it's really the challenge, and I mean there's a little bit of a rush with it too when you're moving up in the world, but it's definitely a challenge and passion, but you have to be patient because there's ups and downs. Like I had my times in this career where I'm just like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I'm done. But you got to get through those times. You got to persevere, push through them. And I think if for some reason, if you thought it was the right time to go, maybe you need to just wait a little bit longer and you're going to go like, no, I'm going to keep going. Don't quit. Just keep doing it. And persevere. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
But definitely
I'd like to know
downs.
Oh boy, yeah, you can't get around that, can you? In those ups and downs, was there a mentor or maybe a few mentors that really helped you to the point where maybe if you didn't even run into these people, you may have given up?
Yeah, I had some chef friends in my life where I was in my low points just with the career, like it's just not going the way I wanted to do. It was just not enjoying it, and I was just like, I think I need to get out of this career. And I had friends that say, nope, you got to stick with it because you're too talented. You have a future in this industry, and if you quit now, we don't want you to waste it. Like you're talented, keep going, just get through this hurdle, and you're gonna make it, and it'll get better, but you just got to push through. And I would say there was like 2 or 3 people in my life that were influenced me that way. I would say a couple that were chefs as well, and then just some personal friends too that said just stick with it. Yeah, and I did.
Yeah, man. Yes, you sure did. And let's talk about what you stuck with. I haven't mentioned yet, I don't think, your shop is Baked Bar LA. Now, there was a time when this shop did not exist. Can you talk to us about something going from your head to manifesting into a full shop? Can you just give us a little walkthrough about how did that happen?
Yeah, I think it's you get a general idea, like I want to start a business. So you think of it, you think about how you want it to be, and you have a vision. And I think starting with the desire to want to do it, you have to be motivated to do it because it takes so much time and energy just to get it started that if you don't have the desire to want it, whether it's the challenge, whether it's just the desire to have your own business, to call it your own, whatever it is that's motivating you, you have to stay focused on that motivation to get to the point, to get to your goal, because there's so many bumps on the way just to starting it, just to getting it going. So many hurdles. There were so many times where we're like, oh, we're just waiting, hurry up and wait. And then we realize once you get going and you get open, you forget about all that waiting and you're just like, okay, now we're like in the rat race and we're running. Because now you gotta make it work. You gotta make it happen. You gotta make it survive and still be motivated once your doors are open. You gotta, keep it going.
And how long has Baked Bar LA been open?
We are, our bakery has been going now for 2.5 years, and our patisserie coffee shop, which is our retail space, has been going almost 2 years. So we're getting closer to 2 years on that. So yeah, it's been great. Yeah.
Awesome. I'd like to go back to the creative process because, I'm an artist. We'll just back up a little bit. How does coming up with something new happen? Is it like one day you just want something new? And where does that start? It's like there's nothing. I have a case full of pastries, but for some reason, why is it there has to be a new one? And how do you do that?
Exactly. There's different ways I personally get inspired. Traveling is a big thing. I love to travel. I love to see what other people are doing. Love to get inspired by other flavor profiles and combinations. I think too, sometimes just the inspiration from a flavor can inspire you to do something different, or just the inspiration of like a fruit or an ingredient can inspire you to want to create something. Like, I want to do something with this ingredient, but what am I going to do with it? Am I going to make a bread? Am I going to do a croissant? Are we doing a dessert? And I think that can be like the seed of where something starts. Or it's that, like I was saying, if I've traveled somewhere or I've seen something and I'm like, I love that flavor, I want to do something like that, or I want to do something similar to that, but I want to do a different format, or I want to do a different type of pastry, but I love that flavor. Whether it's like, strawberry yuzu, matcha, or something savory like za'atar. You want to just, how do I incorporate that? And then you go even deeper and go, okay, am I going to do something plant-based? Am I going to do something conventional? Do I want to do something gluten-free? Because we have so many options. You can go either direction. So you got to filter it.
Awesome. Speaking of flavors, do you believe that flavors evoke an emotional connotation? And I only say that because when you were talking about flavors, it just came to my mind. When I was a young kid, I used to run around in this park and I would play all day. And there were wild onions that grew in that park. And I would act like I was a safari king hunting bugs and grasshoppers and surviving off the land. So I would pull up one of these wild onions and I would narrate, and now the mighty hunter is living off the land and all. Do you think that flavors have an emotional content on some level?
Yeah, I do. And I think too, it probably, like yours was a perfect example. They trigger memories, right? Like a food memory, something that we smell or taste, it triggers something in us. And I think, yes, there's an emotional reaction to that, whether it's positive or negative. But I would probably lean on the lines that usually it's mostly positive, especially with a food memory, because there's so many things in our lives that is so nostalgic with food. I think because so much of life and family revolves around food and the kitchen or the dinner table, that it definitely can evoke emotions. And I think we could probably say, there's something romantic about chocolate, or there's something refreshing about fresh cut herbs, and there's something sweet about like a honeydew melon or watermelon, right? So it just evokes like either happiness or I don't know. I think it definitely evokes something in us. It's almost even more than emotion. It's almost like, because it involves all of our senses. So I definitely agree with that. Yeah.
Now, here's a question. Let's say I've been cooking, I've been baking, and I'm a young guy and I decide I would really love to do this. And I've been to Bake Bar and I'm like, God, that Tony guy is really awesome. I want to do what he does. What advice would you give a young person starting out in this? And I know it's a big question. It's a huge umbrella. There's so much advice. But if that kid sits you down and says, hey, Mr. Tony, I want to be a baker. Can you just tell me just one little thing, just a little nugget?
I think there's a few. I would say there's like a couple nuggets, because it's all encapsulating. Like, you got to be patient. That's the biggest thing. You got to be patient, because you can't. There's not going to be some instant success. You're not going to walk into a job, learn how to do one thing, and you're like, okay, I'm the executive pastry chef. It just doesn't work that way. You have to be patient, and you have to be willing to learn and soak up the information from those around you. Be willing to learn from the people around you that you're working for and with, and pick their brains on stuff, because they're going to want to tell you about what they've learned, or how to do something, or how they've done it, or how they learn how to do it. People love to share that. They love to share how they learned how to do it. And I think if you are patient and you're passionate, but you're inquisitive, also, because you want to learn, people will see that and they pick up on that, and they want to help you learn, and they want to help you grow. And I feel like in this industry, that's not always That's not always the case, because a lot of people can come in sometimes a little too cocky, and they think that they're going to be instant success, and it just doesn't always work that way. If you're patient and humble, especially in the beginning, especially if you're new to it, new to the business, people will see that, and they will appreciate your humbleness. They'll appreciate your inquisitivity, and they will help you grow and help you learn. And you're going to end up making friends for life in this industry. And it's a small industry, so it's good to have friends for life.
I guess like most situations, first off, just be a good person and then go from there.
Treat people
And
the way you
people will
want to
pick
be
up on
treated.
that.
I think you should do that. Treat
Heck
people
yeah.
the way you want to be treated, and that, I think, will pay off in
Now,
anything.
let's talk.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's worked for me. Let's talk about passion. Once again, I have to relate to what I do. I have a passion for painting. I have to paint. When people ask me, why do I paint? Often I will reply, you might as well ask me, why do I breathe air? I have to do it. Is baking like that with you? Is it a passion that's deep within you and you have to do it?
It is. Yeah, I would say it is. In different levels, different forms, because we're doing so many different things. But when I'm not doing it, or if I'm out of it for a week or so, like if I'm out on vacation or something, you get an itch to want to do it. And you can, for myself, I always end up finding myself, even when I'm not in a situation where I should be in a kitchen, I always end up in a kitchen, or end up with talking to a service staff or bakers or the team, and just figuring stuff out and asking their opinions on stuff. So it's definitely a passion, and I feel it, and it's part of you, becomes part of you, especially going back to it being an art form. It's so expressive. I mean, just even in this croissant, the amount of craftsmen that participate in the process of this croissant. I mean, I have somebody mixes this dough, then somebody folds in the butter of the dough into this croissant, and then this croissant also has to get shaped, and then it has to get trayed up, and it has to grow and proof because it's alive, because there's yeast in it, and the temperature has to be perfect, and then it's going to get baked by another baker. And then after that, it's going to go to somebody who's going to serve you, right? So like a barista in our case. So it's going through like 4 artisans just before it even makes it to a person. And I think that when people realize that, there's passion there, because 4 people are passionate about getting you that croissant. And that's got to come from somewhere, because it's a lot of work for, a croissant. But it pays off because it tastes great.
And I'll attest to that. And the experience of enjoying your offerings, it's an experience to me. It's not just eating. I can go grab a pickle out of the fridge right now and eat. But when I sit down with a croissant from you, I almost want everybody to be a little quiet so that I can eat that slowly and really appreciate everything you just talked about. And I would like to thank you for sharing your passion with us and allowing us to be able to partake in it. Now, before we go, I would love for you to tell everyone, where is Bake Bar LA?
Awesome. Yeah, Bake Bar LA is located in Culver City in Los Angeles, and you can find us at bakedbarla.com. We're on Washington Boulevard. So, right, just a couple blocks down from Sony Studios. So, pretty cool spot, right? Kind of in the middle of the city. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Well,
thank you.
The next time I'm in LA, you're going to see me, and I'm sure to have something chocolate ready.
Of course. Yes, we've got that. We've got quite a bit of chocolate here that we always have available.
Oh, God.
And this is all chocolate.
Oh, God.
There's nothing else in there but chocolate.
Oh, boy, that's got my name all over it.
Yeah. So,
well, Tony, I can't thank you enough for sharing your craft with us. And I'm sure it's going to inspire so many people. And all of us who are collectors are going to be stopping in. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
And to those of you listening and watching, I hope you really enjoyed this little talk with Anthony Nigro. and Baked Bar LA. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to check out others. And until next time, be well.